Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be able to talk to you about how brands can leverage podcasts in their communication plan. It's a presentation I shared at the UBA, so Union Belge des Annonceurs, a few weeks ago. So it's quite customized for the Belgian market and to an audience of marketeers. So I'm Victor Leygues. I'm the marketing director here at Target Spot, and I have a special passion for podcasts. So it's a topic very close to my heart. So to start, I would say that without a doubt, podcasts are a great way to advertise. First of all, it's a highly immersive experience. It's a very premium advertising space for an advertiser. And also more specifically for Belgium, it's a place where you can start campaigns with and creatives with a relatively small and let's say agile budget. So why is it immersive? Well, it's content which is consumed on demand. It's really the reinvention of audio versus FM radio. We often like to say that audio is a companion medium. We are definitely in this situation here. You're often listening alone to the podcast while doing something else. And we know also that people consider hosts nearly as friends. And also always keep in mind that most people listen to content with earplugs. So it's really immersive. So why is it premium for an advertiser? Well, most of the time there is one, maybe two maximum ad at the beginning. So there's really low exposition to ads. And you have to keep in mind that that's a French figure, but there are 4 times less advertisers in digital audio than FM radio. So it's highly underinvested, I would say. Also, the fact that it's non-skippable compared to digital video, for instance, is also very interesting. And those two elements give us an exceptional level of response to ads. We've seen that in many research regarding podcast advertising in different countries, which means that you need less repetition to get your message across than in other channels. And that the quality of your creative is maybe less critical, to be heard. And talking about the creative, it's obviously much cheaper to produce than video. I won't even mention the cost of a TV commercial. And also, I think it's very interesting for Belgian brands. If you're part of an international group and you receive like masters from many materials, most of the time audio is not part of the masters. So you have really this local freedom to adapt to your specific needs, and you can do that in a very quick way. So you can really get the benefits of reactivity. So we made a research in France with Ipsos, which is very aligned with a research presented at the UBA in Belgium about the advertising efficiency. And the first point is that in terms of attention to advertising, podcast is the best medium. So people really pay attention to the message they receive. And that's true for also the other dimensions of digital audio, such as internet radio and music streaming. And we will come back to this notion of digital audio, so beyond podcasts. But really great attention to ads. And if you look, for instance, at other digital formats like banners, online video, they tend to be like annoying, disturbing. And with podcasts is much more ads are much more positive appreciation. So it's really a good way for a brand to convey a message. And if you look more particularly at an audio universe, you will see that digital audio brings really an extra scale to FM radio. Try reach, and you see the overlap here on the left of audio listeners, where you can really see that digital audio brings really a strong incremental reach to a FM radio. And this is the figure for general population. When you look at younger people, like 16 to 34 years old, they really over-index very strongly for podcast and digital audio, meaning that in this case, it's FM radio, which somehow nearly becomes the incrementality to your digital audio plan. So really something more and more powerful, which means that if you place mediums on a mapping like Ipsos did for us, a mapping about the attention to advertising score, and in horizontal, the weekly reach, so really, let's say the regular consumption, you really see that if you take the three dimensions individually, you have great attention, but they somehow lack scale, versus other channels. And this is where it becomes very interesting to group them in campaigns and not only consider podcasts, but say, look, I'm going to push a digital audio ad message in various platforms like, I don't know, Spotify, Deezer, web radios, and podcasts. And there you have really the attention to advertising and the strong coverage. Your campaign really becomes like a safe bet, which is very interesting in terms of ROI. Which means that we can really say that podcast advertising is not the shiny new thing anymore. It's not the thing that you put in your innovation budget from your media plan. These things that you don't really care if the budget is cut, or you can nearly burn the investment. Now it must really become part of your mainstream investment, from the core, a core element of your media mix, with really this reinvention of audio. All brands need to have an audio presence. Now, if you think specifically about podcasts, there are very different formats, and any brand today considering podcast advertising is asking itself the following question: like, should I advertise, should I sponsor, or should I create my own podcast? And so you have three different formats for this. The first one that we call announcer read, just a complicated way to say that it's a classic audio commercial, like the ones you hear on FM radio. It's produced with actors, with a script. It's placed in a variety of podcasts, and it's inserted dynamically, like any digital format, so it's a personalized insertion. Not every listener will get it, and you can put it at the beginning, the middle, or the end. So that's announcer-read advertising. Now, you have something which is closer to sponsoring, which is called host-read, which means the host of the podcast is reading your ad. It means it's placed in a unique show, and the ad is, we call it baked in the episode, meaning that anyone listening to the show will hear it. It's not personalized placement. So it's a kind of sponsoring. It's extremely popular in the USA, is the way podcast advertising has really started. The last part is branded podcasts. We know many brands from my discussion are considering this. It means you create your own medium, your voice, and you're working on it with a production agency, a creative agency, and it's very, it's a much bigger investment, obviously. So those are the three different ways to leverage podcast advertising. So we made a little list of questions to help you decide what's the best for you. The initial one is very simple: do you already have FM radio advertising in your plan? Because if you do, without a doubt, you should scale your campaign into digital audio too, because of the incremental reach you get. So it's an automatic. It's not a question anymore in 2022 to do FM radio only. You would miss enormous part of the audiences. If you're not doing it, then the question is your audience listening to podcasts? Because if they do, no doubt you should do podcast advertising. We've seen the exceptional level of attention to the ads, that's for sure. The remaining question that we will handle in the following question is, how do you do that? You know, an answer read, host read, or your branded podcast. Now, if your audience, doesn't listen to podcasts, well, maybe they listen to music streaming or web radio. It's very likely, honestly, which means that make sure you don't miss the train of digital audio. You know, like there's a really huge trend of digital audio consumption. We know many brands were ignoring in the past audio presence. It's not something you can afford to do anymore. Okay, so I'm going to focus now on an answer which kind of podcast advertising to do according to the place of the funnel that you want to focus on. An answer read, the advantage is you can do any kind of campaign. It's scalable. You can use it at different stages of the funnel. Where it's a bit different for host-read ads and branded podcast, they have more like a niche usage. So host-read is like influencer marketing, you know, so obviously very interesting for trial. We will come back to that. And branded podcast is a lot around community building, so very related to loyalty. I'm simplifying things for the sake of the presentation. The meaning is, consider an answer read, you can scale campaigns. The two others will have much more narrow reach. And we're gonna dig in the three formats now. So host-read ads. So I like to call it the Rolls-Royce of audio ads. It's very, very premium. And you will see why. The first thing is, we like to say at Target Spot that podcast creators are the new influencers, the new YouTubers, you know, or Instagrammers or Twitch, you know. So it's very influential to do host read. Like it's comparable to word of mouth in terms of efficiency. So it's really the endorsement of the host that you get. And also it's the reassurance to know where your ad is placed. We know many small native podcasts are not necessarily well known, so you can have this sort of fear of not having control where your ad is placed. With host-read, you're talking to one podcaster. It's very safe. And it makes it very relevant for a niche business. If you're selling yachts, well, you can go to a podcaster which is specialized in, I don't know, luxury car podcast. You know, you will get an audience which is spot on for your business. The same for B2B. The limits are that it's not really scalable, and it's not really audience planning like we do in marketing in the modern way, which means that you can waste your budget because you don't control where the people listening to the podcast are. They can be abroad, and the time when they listen to it. They could play it in 5 years. Your product could be, I don't know, delisted, or that's the sort of thing you don't control at all. And obviously, you pay a very high CPM for the word of mouth. For the workload, it's also much more significant. You have to handle the relationship with the production agency, probably the podcaster himself. You know, it's more intense. I must say, it's not very well established in Belgium. Like, it's not something brands are used to do, probably because of the lack of native podcasters in Belgium. So one alternative for you is to do classic sponsoring. So it's a message such as, this podcast is brought to you by, and here you don't get the benefits of the podcaster endorsement, but you have a good presence. So in general, keep in mind, like host read is like influencer marketing. So integrate it in your influencer plan. You know, when you do arbitrage between YouTube, Instagrammers, Twitch hosts, well, that's the sort of the decision you need to make versus podcasters. Branded podcasts. So it's fantastic content. Like when you produce an episode of a branded podcast, like it will be so easy afterwards to write articles for your blog, to create content for your social media, to leverage it in PR or events. It's fantastic. I must say it's the benefits of long form duration. So the podcast will become the core of your content strategy. It means you have to be authentic and transparent. And if you do that, you will get the benefits of long duration content. It's intimate, it's engaging, it's thorough treatment of information. Now, you need extremely high resources to build the content first, which is not cheap, and promote it. So you cannot produce your podcasts, publish them, and hope that you will get overnight a good listenership. No, you have to do that over time. You have to invest in media to get it known. It's really you really need the two legs of content creation and content distribution, which means that it's important you ask yourself the following question: can you be this content-rich brand? Honestly, most brands do, in my opinion. But do you have a community? Do you have this potential? And certainly, can you make it last over time? Like can you handle, the internal politics, the changes in hierarchy, in marketing plans, in business priorities, like and commit over time, because you need to publish episodes consistently, one by week, one by month, I don't know, but you cannot publish 2 episodes and then leave for 6 months. And an extra question for Belgium, an extra challenge is the challenge of the size of the population per language. It makes it much more difficult in Belgium. This is why I'd say in Belgium, honestly, I think it's very hard to succeed. One thing, a very good alternative, in my opinion, in terms of earned media, is to get your CEO invited in podcast. CEO or someone else, someone representing your company or your brand, to be invited in podcast. So you'll get benefits of long form, long duration content without having to commit yourself. So now we're going to move to the last bit, which is the biggest part, which are announcer read ads to build scalable campaigns. So always keep in mind, announcer read ads are dynamically inserted on an individual base. Which means that you can really scale campaign. You have control and flexibility over your budget, the timing, you have great reporting, all these things which come with digital ads and that you don't necessarily get with the other ways to do podcast advertising. You can also adapt your creative with the DCO. We have an example where the creative changes when temperatures goes above a certain degree. Later in the presentation, you can do that with geography, and obviously geographical targeting is very common in podcast advertising. We know ads, audio, radio is very local media. Here you can completely range it. So all these advantages of digital advertising apply. However, it's still different. Why is it different? Is because primarily digital audio is a cookie-free environment. Okay, so it's the good side is it's ready for the third-party cookie phase out of Google. Soon you'll have to do without third-party cookies in Chrome. Which means it's really ready. Digital audio, podcast advertising is really ready for this phase of a more privacy-minded marketing, which is coming. But obviously, you cannot track, because of that, an individual based on his behavior. You cannot do retargeting like you would do with banners or, I don't know, video online or this kind of sophisticated plans. You can still do targeting without personal information. We call it probabilistic targeting rather than deterministic. It's statistical, based on zip code most of the time, thanks to zip code. And you can then, be able to purchase some data about household income, cars ownership, and so on, and inject it in your podcast advertising campaign. Another alternative is to do contextual targeting. If you're a car manufacturer, well, you could decide to purchase only football podcasts because you know there is a great affinity in terms of audience with car buyers. So the conclusion is, don't use podcast advertising to get clicks. We're talking about something which is not a performance medium. Okay, it's more awareness and branding, let's say, medium. So if you take the purchase funnel about this unanswered read ads, it's great ROI for branding campaigns because you have a better attention to ads than any other digital touch point. So you need less repetition to get your message across, much better visibility. And if you're a brand talking to a very large audience, I don't know, like you're a bank or a mobility provider, then you can really say, okay, I'm already on radio. I can scale my campaign with digital audio and podcast, obviously. But if your brand has a young audience, we are really ready now for plans, audio plans, which are only on digital. Dare to do that because the reach coming from digital audio is really great. Again, beyond podcast. Keep in mind, music streaming, web radio, and podcasts. And a very nice icing on the cake is the fact that you don't have ad blockers. And if you go further down the purchase funnel, always keep in mind, we're talking about something which is not a performance medium. If you want to go to something more purchase of funnel, you can, for instance, select podcasts from a specific category, but you always need to keep in mind, don't go for very, very limited selection because you will have a campaign which doesn't balance the reach and the affinity, the context. You always need to do that. Now I'd like to share a few use cases to inspire you, a few campaigns. The first one is for a home appliance retailer who was aiming to drive people to store during sales, completing an FM radio plan. And here, what was very interesting is the fact that they adapted the audio creative. Anytime the temperature was above 25 degrees in the zip code of the listener, the ad was featuring an air conditioner. Okay, and if you were below 25 degrees, it was a general promotional message. So great dynamic creative optimization usage. Another example was a kitchen remodeling campaign, a client who wanted to support his franchisee stores. And you know how, the franchisee area is critical to him. So here, the creative was adapted based on the zip code. And the specific store was mentioned in the creative according to the area of the listener. What is particularly interesting is that we were able to have a very local campaign, but still very powerful with a strong reach because you were mixing all the dimensions of digital audio. So people listening to podcasts, music streaming, web radios, even mobile games. So you get really, complementary targets and strong reach. The last one is a bit different. It's a French campaign. It's the launch of an eco-friendly electric toothbrush, targeting high-income household. And here they went to a podcast-only campaign where they selected premium podcast of Radio France, one of our main inventory in France. And they selected podcasts from, well-being theme, tech category, sustainability interest. And also they used a true crime mode more for the reach. So again, balance, reach, and affinity. And on top of that, they purchased from a DMP targeting criteria such as high-income households, personal hygiene interests, real estate owners for the household ownership, and so on. And my final message, because it's very close to my heart, is that it's great to support an ecosystem with strong values. It's very thorough journalism. As we talked, we mentioned, the benefits of long duration content is nothing like clickbaits. You get really into the heart of topics, and it's great also for the freedom of the press. It's one great way to for native podcasters to emerge. It's a very cheap way to launch, and those native podcasters are entrepreneurs, passionate people. We need to help them make a living, to monetize. And this is where advertisers come in, and we can really help them continue make a really good living out of their passion. Lastly, if you're interested into starting a campaign, you can reach out to us via the website or contact us form. We have very broad inventory in Belgium across all forms of digital audio, such as Nostalgie, Energy, and or Deezer for music streaming. And if you simply want to keep learning about digital audio, check out our blog. We publish articles on a regular basis, and that's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a great day.